welcome to another episode of E&FtV's Bridging the Gap. And I count myself extremely lucky to be joined by King of Revenue Management cross-industry this morning, Luca Lattanzi. Luca, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Jason. What about you?
Yep, good. Looking forward to the weekend. And I know you're flying off to Italy, aren't you, after tomorrow, is it, or later today?
Yeah, tomorrow morning. So yeah, really looking forward for my break.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. Just looking at your CV earlier on LinkedIn before the call, so interesting. Can't wait to hear you just talk us through from, being younger through to being head of commercial strategy at CrossCountry Trains.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Do you want to just crack on my work experience then, or my story?
Yeah. Talk us through it from when you first started in your first position, because I know you've obviously had such an interesting history in revenue management and now in commercial, but also prior to that, you've done another things out of the industry, haven't you? That
Yeah,
look
I
quite
did. I did
interesting.
change. I did change a lot of industries, but at the end of the day, I've always been kind of keeping everything around revenue management and pricing. So yeah, it has been, I think, quite a unique run, quite a unique story. So I did graduate about 12 years ago, 2011. Obviously, you can tell from the accent, I'm Italian. So I did study commerce back then. Then I did a master degree in applied economics, and part of that program was a year abroad in Ireland. So I did study and lived in Galway, which is the third biggest city, is on the other side, so is on the Atlantic Ocean. Absolutely beautiful place, and that really helped me A, to become fluent in English, and B, to actually thinking about life outside Italy. So yeah, shortly after I graduated, we'll talk about graduates a little bit more later during this chat. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of felt I knew what I didn't want to do, but I didn't really know how to get where and what I wanted to get, and I didn't know what kind of actual job title I wanted to pursue in my later throughout my career. So there's a lot of graduates that applied for tons of jobs, and then I managed to land an offer with PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So obviously, it's a strong name on the CV. Was lucky enough to get this internship in my hometown, Udine, which is a small city in northeast Italy. It's only about 100,000 people, so it's quite small. The office, nevertheless, it was kind of, I wouldn't say mid-sized, but it still probably was about 20 to 30 auditors. So as you know, PwC does consulting, which is the cool stuff, and then there is the audit, which is the boring stuff. So yeah, I was in audit, and what I soon realized after the internship, which was 6 months, is that it probably wasn't for me, because it was really, you would have had to, being more like on the accountant side. And what I did feel, I wanted to be able to have an actual impact on the performance of a company. And that is really, from my point of view, what revenue management and commercial is about, where actually, when you think about a finance role, you're always looking backwards. You're looking at the books, what they told you in the past. You're not really looking
Yeah.
at what I can do to increase the company performance. So after that, I started to apply everywhere in Europe. It was a bad time for Italy. It was when actually the government failed, and then we had a technical government. So a little bit like probably how it's been UK maybe a year ago. So just in the start of a recession, very difficult for someone with no experience finding a job. So I started to fire CVs all around Europe, and yeah, ended up in Slovakia. Who would have ever thought? I never even went there as a tourist. So I did move to Bratislava. I stayed there 2 years, and I joined IBM. That was a massive company. Dare I say, back in the day, it's not even back in the day, but like 10, 12 years ago, IBM is a little bit more like what when you say now about Amazon or Google. So it was like literally like kind of the top when you think about technology. Now it went a little bit downhill, unfortunately. But yeah, I moved there as a new exciting role. I've been pricing analyst. So what is the difference between that and revenue management? Well, it's a bit more static, it's a little bit more analytical, and obviously I was basically pricing these massive deals for IT solutions or hardware and software, and then I would be working with the project executive, and they would go back to the company, to the client, and then basically they will tailor a solution originally, which is, let's say, it was like a Ferrari, right? And then little by little, they will go smaller and smaller and smaller, and then at the end of the day, they will end up selling something like a Fiat Panda. So, was quite fun. So a lot of back and forth, but obviously not as dynamic as I would have liked to. Which that takes us to then, I think was October 2014, so nearly 10 years ago. That's when I moved for the first time to the United Kingdom. So I did land a role at Hertz, the car rental company, and yeah, moved to the UK. This was a pricing and yield analyst, but in reality was a revenue management analyst. And this is where I really started to get into the world of revenue management, which I found incredibly exciting because obviously, again, much more dynamic than the pricing role. Shortly after that, I got my first management role. So as a revenue manager at a competitor, Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I stayed there for about a year and a half. And then after that, I felt I was ready for the next step in my career, and I got to a much smaller organization, which unfortunately now went into liquidation. Has been bought by a competitor, which was called ESA, which stands for Executive Service Apartment. So this company was based in Newbury. I stayed there for 2.5 years. And I was first a revenue manager and then the head of revenue management. So that role, I absolutely loved it because I was reporting to the commercial director, and there was no revenue management into the company. Basically, the role was brought in and they say to me, "Okay, Luca, try to apply your experiences that you learned at in the car rental companies and the technology companies, and see if we can actually build up." Yeah, I wouldn't say revenue management department because again, it was only me. The company was quite small. We're talking about 10 million pounds turnover. But yeah, it was about really starting to create all the reporting, the methodology, the revenue management system. I managed also to implement a channel management system for us to start to sell on OTAs such as Expedia and Booking.com. So yeah, I did learn a lot. And yeah, after 2.5 years, but we started to feel like the company was going into liquidation. And obviously, it's not like one of those big companies where they gave you a massive payout and redundancy and all. So I was a little bit worried. I just started a family. We just got my wife and myself, we just got married at the time. So again, I felt like I wanted to do something a little bit different. So started to apply for jobs. And then I found this opportunity in Malta as head of revenue management. So I moved over to Malta in 2018, which was like, again, never been to Malta. It's a little bit like Slovakia. So I'd never thought about, I want to move to Malta earlier in my career or in my life. And it just happened. So I worked for a company which was called Azur. It was a subsidiary of the Corinthia Group, which is actually, obviously very famous Corinthia London, but in reality, Corinthia is a Maltese group. So they have like 4 or 5 hotels in Malta, and then probably about 10 or 12 around the world: Portugal, Czech Republic, Hungary, UK, Russia. So that role as head of revenue management, basically the company is, as I said, subsidiary of Corinthia, but in reality it was a timeshare company. So I've been brought in to actually work with the hotel, which was a Radisson Blu. So it's a franchise owned by Corinthia. So all the Radisson in Malta are run by Corinthia. And I was working with the revenue management team at Corinthia to basically maximize the capacity and the RevPAR for the hotel. On top of that, the cool thing of Azur is that they also had their own 4 Sunseeker yachts. And they had at the time a supercar club in Donington Race Circuit, just close to East Midlands Airport. And they also had multi-properties overseas, like in Spain and Greece. And also I was actually the person actually managing all the pricing and the revenue management for all this portfolio of assets, which was very exciting. Unfortunately, when COVID hit, the company, Corinthia, decided to put Azur in voluntary liquidation. So we were about 200 people, and we went down to only 15. And I was one of those 15. So basically, from the ashes of Azur, a phoenix was rising, which was called VCMS, which stands for Vacation Club Management Services, which again another subsidiary of Corinthia, which was there only to actually manage the membership base. So we weren't selling and growing; we were just managing the existing members. The club was the biggest club in Malta; was about 15,000 members. So we were looking after them, and that's where I had my role as head of commercial. So just dropped a little bit the part on revenue management and started to look more around the portfolio of different assets that we had and doing a little bit of business development and product development, which was great. But then again, it was quite a small company. And then back then, that was about 2.5 years ago, I felt like I wanted to go back, I guess, home, which is the United Kingdom now, not Italy anymore. I guess a little bit of pressure from my wife as well. She wanted to go back. We had, at the time, we had a 1.5-year-old son. We wanted to send him over to school back in the UK, and as well, I have a pre-settled status, so I'm not an English citizen. So the thing is, if I wouldn't have got back in about 6 months' time from then I would have needed a visa to come back to the United Kingdom. So it would have made basically everything way harder. So started to apply for a lot of jobs. This was actually throughout COVID, and then I got an offer as commercial director back in Morton in Marsh in the Cotswolds for Baron's Eden, which is a spa hotel company. So that was again new role for the company, reporting directly to the board of directors. I do feel I brought in a lot of very exciting things, especially in the revenue management space, because we had one revenue manager, but she was a little bit isolated from the rest of the company. So we didn't really have a commercial culture embedded into the organization. And I stayed there, unfortunately, only for about a year. And then they decided to make their role redundant because they basically created the role for someone because they wanted to step back. So the owners were in their 60s and they just wanted to, kind of semi-retire. But then they realized that actually they enjoy too much the job and they didn't want someone else to actually take decisions for them. So yeah, that happened. And to be honest with you, it really was very difficult to accept. It really played with my mental health and, started to apply for a lot of jobs. So after redundancy, it took me it's not a long time in reality. It took me 3 months to land an offer. But to me, when you're actually into that, it feels more like years. You start to
Forever,
doubt
yeah.
about, you start to doubt about your experience. You start to doubt about, am I actually good or I just think I am, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And yeah, as a lot of things in life, you keep trying and trying and trying, and nothing happens. And then all of a sudden, it happened that in the space of 1 week, and I can guarantee you, I haven't changed the way I interview, I haven't changed anything. But then all of a sudden, I had 5 offers at the same time, 5 offers, which is
That
absolutely
answered your
insane.
question, I guess.
Yes, exactly, and that takes us to today because then I picked the one as a head of commercial for CrossCountry Trains. I thought, it would have been exciting to change sector again. I had another offer for airline, another offer for sort of hospitality, it was around villas. Then I had another one for pure hospitality, and another offer again for another train company. Why did I take cross country is why I think a lot of people should actually, dare I say, think in the same way I've been thinking. I looked at the leader I was going to report to. So I didn't look at the actual role. I looked at, can I work for this person? Would I feel comfortable to work for this person? Would I be able to be myself to work with this person? And this is why I took the job. And yeah, I think it has been the right choice. The first few months has been incredibly challenging, not because I guess the complexity of the role. The role is quite complex. I can't deny it, but mainly because it's the culture in the rail industry is in. I know I shouldn't throw garbage on what I'm doing, but yeah, the culture. I'm a very honest man. The culture is very very backwards. So very, very close to change and all. So when I came in, the pace I was used to, especially being from a private sector where I wanted to do 20 things at the same time in a week, is a way slower. So there is an incredible amount of red tape. It's incredibly complex, like how the decisions take place. And on top of that, there is also, unfortunately, there is the people tend to blame the actual system rather than themselves. So it's always easy to say, we can't do this, we can't do that because the Department for Transport would say no, because the finance department would say no, because Arriva Group would say no. But the reality is just too scared to change. And yeah, over the last year, I've been there about a year and 3 months now. Things have got incredibly better. It's a very exciting team. The commercial department, I think, has never been this strong, and I think it's so nice to go there and see a lot of people motivated. The ideas are starting to float around. There is a lot of positive energy. We're starting to do outings with the team, so we're really, really building up, and it's getting more and more exciting. It's busy, but busy with a lot of exciting and good projects, and that's
Yeah,
my
one
story,
thing
really.
that and it is a whole episode, your story. It's so interesting.
Thank you.
I could ask about 6 trillion questions to you. But one thing that leaps out as you chat through your history is the fact that you've not been scared to make a change. You've jumped on opportunities as they've come. You've detected when is a good time to make a change.
Mm.
And you've done what a lot of people in RM have not done, and you've you've not pigeonholed yourself in one industry, but you've kind of
Yeah.
agilely jumped about and tried different things. And so, I just think that that's so brave, and something that I think that the students and the graduates watching the show should definitely take on board. Was that something you always planned to do?
Thank you. Yeah, but I guess I'm one of those people that I'm a doer, so I don't like to, you know, think about stuff too much. I think I wouldn't say I'm impulsive. I probably got better with age, but I think it's important in your life not to take yourself too seriously, and you know, just do stuff. If you don't do stuff, you start from something small. It could be buying a car, but then if you don't do stuff, you won't get married, you won't have kids,
Yeah.
you won't buy that house, you won't take that opportunity. And I just trying to live my life and my career at my fullest. I just think it's so much more fun in that way, and it did help me as well to land offers. The fact that you have a compelling story, which is not made up, is real. It's just, people do want to work with leaders that have that kind of slightly different edge compared to others, to people that actually are brave. And why I guess why I landed these offers specifically is because they wanted to do something different. And obviously you won't be able to do something different if you keep doing the same thing every day. If you do the same thing every day, you can't expect a different outcome. So yeah, they brought me in literally to shake things, and I've been shaking things massively, and it has been difficult at the beginning, and now I think is a lot of fun, and I'm really, really enjoying.
It's commendable what you've done, and it obviously comes from a growth mindset that you've had throughout your career.
Mm.
You've seen so many different industries in revenue management. What would you say are the say between hospitality and the rail industry, for instance? What's the difference in attributes and skills, soft skills required to be successful in hospitality versus in rail?
So hospitality, I would probably unpack it on there is a massive difference um, in the culture between a single property or a small group of property or the big four, such as Hilton and Marriott, etc., which they're completely different games. I think they're much more similar than the airline and the car rental companies, because the train and hospitality, you do require a lot of soft skills. So talking to our customer facing colleagues. So as a revenue, and there is always this debate, shall the revenue manager sit into the property or shall the revenue manager sit in the head office, right?
Yeah.
And there is not right or wrong answer, and depends on the company culture. But yes, as a revenue manager, when he's actually sitting in the property, is very similar to what we're trying to do in rail. So you're really embedded in the day to day. But there is that fine line between actually who should take the decisions. While from my point of view, being a commercial individual, ultimately commercial should talk with operations and can take in their feedback, but ultimately commercial should be the sole decision maker. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of other companies. Perfect example. I was thinking about it earlier when I was reading your questions. Was Hertz versus Enterprise Rent a Car. Both car rental companies, and both of them incredibly different in the way they operate. Hertz is operating a way more like a global company, and you will look at the revenue management analyst, which they have a background, which is much more like a person that did a bachelor in commerce or in management with a master's in business analysis sort of thing, and they're much more analytical. And they don't really talk with the front line unless it's maybe once a week when they have their scheduled calls. But actually, enterprise rent a car is really customer centric, and most of the team is actually people that they made their way up working in branches and now they're actually
Yeah.
revenue managers, but they don't have any. Most of them have a degree, because when you go into present car, you need a degree, but it might be a degree in geography, and then they are revenue
Yeah.
managers and they don't even know how to do a VLOOKUP on Excel. So it's different, but there are pros and cons of both. And that is, I think, enterprise and car is very similar to what you would see in hotels. So in hotels, you will see a lot of people that they made them way up from front desk, then they do reservation manager, revenue manager.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's very different angles. Where myself, and this is how I think technically you could be much more successful, but then again, everyone has his own ways. I do feel that I do feel that you would be stronger in revenue management if you actually started as an analyst. So if you have a background which is analytical and all, and then you make your way up to, let's say, a revenue manager. Say that, but it's incredibly. So if I have to decide between two, so there are two things that are most important in revenue management. So as you said, soft skills and hard skills. So being analytical and being a good people person. In reality, being a good people person is even more important than being analytical. And what is the struggle? The struggle is that a lot of people that are highly analytical, they're not people person. So you need the best of both worlds. If you have those two qualities, you're going to be excelling so well in revenue management, and your career would accelerate so quickly to go to the top very quickly. Like if I think about me when I started to work to get to a head of position, it took me 4 years. So that's quick. But then again, you need to have both. You can't get there if you're just a people person, you don't understand numbers, and you can't get there if you don't know how to talk to people, if you don't know to, because at the end of the day, in reality, from my point of view, revenue management is a sales role, because you're selling your ideas. As the same way when
Yeah.
you interview for someone, you're the product, and you're selling yourself to the hiring
Yeah.
manager because you think you're the best fit. It's exactly the same in revenue management. So you're selling your ideas, and it's super important that you keep it simple. It's super important that you get people on board. When I say people on board, is mainly, let's say, ops directors or general managers or whatever you want to call them, and they will actually appreciate way more what you're doing and get your point of view. So that is super important.
And I'm always a little bit taken aback by the amount of candidates that go to interview and struggle to impress the personality on the person
Yeah.
interviewing. For me, and probably for you, it's the easiest thing in the world because we are
Mm.
people. But so many people, so many analytical professionals struggle. They're fine talking about data and that kind of thing, but when it comes to, I don't know, just a curveball, tell us about what you like to do on a weekend. They're totally like, and obviously
Yeah,
companies are looking for cultural fit these days, so it is something that
absolutely.
people struggle with.
That is huge. But may I say, I think it's important that also the hiring manager makes this person feel incredibly comfortable. So you need to be down to earth. I've seen a lot of hiring managers. When I look back at I did the interview a lot before getting this role across country. And then I
Yeah,
think back, and when I was thinking a lot of times, oh well, maybe I'm not good enough or whatever, then I think about few things that some of the hiring managers told me, or the way they're approaching certain conversations, the way they were looking at me, the way they were questioning me, and like then I think about it. Well, that's I wouldn't have been the right fit, and I think it's important. We will talk more about graduates later on, but the most important thing for a graduate is being able to learn, but is working for the right leader. I can't stress enough how important you do that you work for someone that you respect, but even more that that person respects you and treats you as an equal. And then again, goes back to that's the reason why I took CrossCountry Train job opportunity, because I felt the hiring manager, which is one of our executive directors, was a good person, and I've seen myself striving and working very close with this person. And I know it's difficult when you're more junior in your career because you see the pound sign and your eyes go like this, but it's important to keep your feet on the ground and work for the right leader. It's
yeah.
huge.
You've got to look after your future self, haven't you? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you guys take on a fair number of graduates from your local universities in Birmingham, and Aston is one of
Yeah.
them. What are the hard skills that you're looking for then in the rail industry? looking for maybe advanced Excel, SQL, Tableau, Power BI.
Well,
Are these?
I'll be very honest. So the rail industry is very backwards when it comes to technology. So me, having worked in a lot of different industries and thinking about revenue management, in reality, actually, the most advanced industry that I've seen is car rental. Car rental, they use big data 15 years ago. They're really, really, really advanced. Hospitality, especially for smaller problems, it's like 10, 15 years um, behind car rental, but I would say I would put in this bucket the same also airline. Airline is also very sophisticated.
Yeah,
And rail is more or less on the same level of smaller hospitality companies are, which is crazy because you think it's a sector that accounts 10 billion pounds a year. It's a sector that moves around, God, don't quote me on this, but probably about 400 million passengers a year, maybe more than that. Like, if you think about cross country by itself, we have 14 train operating company in the UK, and cross country is actually more or less in mid-table, so it's not with the big dogs, but it's not the smallest either. And we're still like, £500 million business. And a lot of what we do is still on Excel. So again, why? Because the industry has never been open to actually hire people from outside the industry, and the industry has never been open. They always put a lot of stress of how important it is that you have a rail background rather than being able to think about out of the box. But this has
mm,
changed dramatically over the last couple of years since I'm not sure if you ever heard about that, the William Shapps white paper, which is basically paper where that is the founding paper to start all these great British rail transition team. So basically the rail reform that is going to happen in the next 10 years. One of the biggest emphasis of this paper, on top of moving to a customer-centric product, was also changing the people that are within the rail sector. So getting people from outside, starting to look at things from another perspective. Going
yeah,
back to the hard skills. So yeah, absolutely important to be, proficient with Excel. We don't need programmers at the moment, but if someone is a programmer, is great. VBA would be great to have. SQL, yes. Tableau, we're using it, but not as much as we should. So QuickSight is another one from AWS, which is important for me. But then again, I really think that anything can be taught. You don't need to know all the stuff. Is important that the personality and the willingness to learn. As I always say during my interviews, when they ask me what do I look for in a candidate, I look at three things, and these three questions I ask myself after the interview. And the first one is, can the person do the job? Ideally, and this is unfortunately, this is what most of the hiring managers look at. 80% of them, they just look at, can the person do the job? That's important, but not as important than the other two. The second one is, will the person do the job? Because you can have the best person in the world, but sometimes they would come into the role, which is a sidestep, or they needed that because personal situations. So they have the ability to do the job, but they refuse to do it at their maximum of their capabilities, simply
yeah,
because some personal circumstances. And the third question, which is never really looked at, but for me is incredibly important, is, would this person fit into the team and into the culture? So yeah, you need that fit. So you can have the person, with the master degree from Master University and MBA that has done the most complicated projects in the world, but then that person is not a people person, doesn't want to work in a team, thinks is better than anyone else. That defeats the complete objective, and doesn't want to
yeah.
do the job because he feels the job it should be already 3 steps ahead of what is required this person to do. So yeah, I have been looking a lot for a cultural fit, and a lot of times, and I'm saying this myself, I truly believe in the power of education. I'm saying this myself with a master degree in applied economics. I went for candidates that their last job was in Foot Locker with zero work experience, compared to candidates with 10 years of experience with two MBAs. Why did I do that? Because again, better cultural fit, and especially because I saw in the eye of the other person that hunger, that passion, that wanting to make the difference and
Mm.
wanting to do something. That's huge for me.
Which is more important than knowing SQL, which can be taught.
Exactly. If you're intelligent, you can learn, but the other thing that you can never change is the attitude. The attitude is like something you can tweak your attitude, but you have it or you don't have it. Like when we talk about me earlier, during my career history, that you say, okay, look, you're a go-getter. That you have it, you don't have it, no? So that kind of
Yeah.
attitude, you're born with that. Um, well, actually, as you said, SQL you can learn, Tableau you can learn if you're smart, or even if you're not that smart, it will take a little bit longer, but you will still be able to learn it. We're not talking about being a neurosurgeon, right?
Yeah. It's that willingness to learn, isn't it? And attitude, positivity, and looking after your future self by looking at, are you going to get good mentoring? Are you going to get good opportunities to progress rather than, as
Yeah,
you say, just the pound signs at the start of your career?
yeah.
Um, I think we should have made this episode 2 hours long because, again, I've just
Next
got
time
loads
we
and
can do
loads I want to
we
do.
can do part two if you want, maybe in a few weeks. Yeah.
I'll hold you to that because
Okay.
there's
Yeah,
so
that's
much
fine.
that I want to pick up on. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think for graduates watching, it's been an absolute revelation. So many top tips. I often end the show by asking whoever I'm interviewing to give us some top tips, but I think you've given us so many throughout, so many nuggets of gold throughout this last half an hour that
Mm.
there's no need to do that. So I really, really thank you for coming on the show.
No worries. If
It's
you
been
want, I have a few
fantastic.
more actually. If you still have a little bit of time around graduates, um, if I
Go for
may.
it.
Um, when it comes to write the CV, a lot of people are very scared of putting experience that they think is not relevant when at the beginning of their career. Let's say whilst they studied, they were a McDonald's crew for a year, or they worked at Zara or H&M or whatever. Guys, include that in the CV. For me, is massive because if you show that whilst you were studying, you were rolling your sleeves up, and you were humble, and you put the work in. At least for me, it's huge. I'd rather have that than a few more projects on that they did at uni. So it's showing humbleness. It's incredibly important, and you can do so many examples of what you learn, and that's what I want to see. I always ask them the question when I see they were like kitchen porters and Nando's. It's like, okay, what did you learn from that experience? And that's huge important because you interact with people all the time. Is customer service, which we always think the customer service means being with a headset like I am on answering to calls. No, that's not that. Customer
Yeah.
service is actually creating long lasting relationships with other peers, colleagues inside your team and another team or whatever. And that's huge because when you're aligned with someone else in another team, you get stuff done so much quicker. So yeah, I think they should never leave out from their CV whatever they're doing that is not specifically an internship as a business analyst, as an example, or a revenue management internship. And the other thing that I think is very important is, and I'm not giving you free advertising, but it's super important to talk with recruitment agencies, niche recruitment agencies, like Edwards and Finn. There is another one which I'm not going to mention, but you know what I'm talking about. These two are the top, not only in the UK, United Kingdom, but even in Europe. Why these specific two agencies, specifically Edwards and Finn, is because you guys really care about people and care about candidates. So it's not like I've been working with, and I'm not going to mention them. I've been working as a candidate, but also as a hiring manager with other agencies, and I just didn't get the same. So they weren't looking for what was the right fit for me. But then again, I was a pound sign, right? Because of my product. Let's not forget, these agencies potentially, they can make up to 20% of your yearly salary. So if, let's say, throwing a number, if you make $50,000 a year, that's £10,000, $10,000 into an agency fee. And I've seen a lot of times in my past that actually, when I wasn't sure about the job, it was the agency itself to actually try to
Yeah.
push the job on me, saying, no, that is an amazing company, you will love it. And yeah, when you get those kind of
Shoddy recruitment.
exactly. So when you get these real estate vibes, means that's not good. And as well, everything that Edwards and Finn is doing with the graduate is huge. So me as a hiring manager, as we discussed today, I really look for personality, and I would love to be approached directly by graduates. So they shouldn't be shy. That's the thing, LinkedIn is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Make it personal. Don't write this. You don't want that message in your LinkedIn that it sounds like a cover letter. No, you want someone that actually you could tell the passion when I always reply every single
Yeah, of
time when I
course.
get a message on LinkedIn. A lot of hiring managers don't. The only people I don't reply is someone that tries to sell me something. This is fine, right? But when I'm talking about people, I always reply. And then again, that is a big sign. If you send a message to a leader and that leader doesn't reply, it means you probably don't want to work in that organization anyways.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
so they shouldn't be shy. They should be, approaching people, trying to go. I know there are not many, but networking is absolutely huge.
Well, unfortunately, we had some technical issues, which meant that you missed the last 30 seconds of what Luca was saying. So apologies for that. But we look forward to seeing you next week. And in the meantime, like and share because it helps the channel.